4 sites, we don't want to fall into that. Off you go. Now there's complexity to it because there's land value, there's mortgages attached to the land. Go off, lads, into a room and work it out. You've had 4 years to do it, and you still haven't done it. Right? But it's as simple as that. All they need is access to the land at a cheap price, and that, once the state has a license, they can control the process, and that value is passed on to the end user. If you hand a site to a developer, to me, or anyone in the private sector, I'm going to pull value out of it, and the end user is going to pay for it. They charge 5% profit on their price, so their net, the cost to build a 3-bed is €193,000. It's 100 square metres, A2 rated. Kitchen's okay. You might upgrade it if you want it. Maybe you want to spend a few more quid on it. But you know, if you go to buy a 3-bed anywhere around here, Shankill, Ballyogan, you name it, it's the exact same build cost, probably cheaper, and you might be paying $550 for it. So, you know, what they're doing is, you know, they're doing something really special because they're proving the concept works, and this is the model the way to go. Now, in terms of, you know, sorry, I'll just go back to this very briefly. In terms of land capacity, you give away land for free. Say you give Bill 100 acres for free and say, go off there and build me 1,000 units. How am I going to get that land value back? Well, what you do is you go off and you rezone another section of another 100 acres, which is agricultural in the appropriate location. Look, drive past Darragh, you'll see there's fields around it, bales of hay. That's the way it was 20 years ago. Local authorities have the capacity to rezone land within a matter of months. Right? So in the right locations, you could CPO farm. Cherrywood 700 acres, you could go off and CPO 2 or 3 farms. So we're going to do that as a new Cherrywood, bring the transport lanes out to it. 10 grand an acre turns into, Cherrywood's 1.2 billion now, after 20 years. So the local authority has the ability to, this really precious asset we're told about, which is it's a finite, they can actually turn water into wine and get that. But instead of doing that for a private landowner, why not do it for the state and use it as a way to fund an affordable housing at scale? And instead of charging people 140 grand a unit for the site, charge them €1,000. So there's a way to actively manage land in a smart way. They do it in Singapore and control it and pass the discount on to the end users. So in terms of the capacity, if you look at Fingal and South Dublin County Council, and this is something I had to go off and get this 3 official responses to it. I didn't believe it when I got the numbers in. Between the next slide here, I'll show you a slide actually. San Marino is a great place to go for your holidays. See the lovely, it's slightly bigger, population 25,000. If you're going there, just have a think, and think that Fingal and South Dublin own a land bank bigger than San Marino. Now this is land of all types. This is amenity land, you know, probably a lot of it is not suitable for residential, agricultural. It's actually 67 square kilometres, but I'm sure in the middle of that there might be 700 acres for another Cherrywood, or maybe 2 of them. So, you know, at the moment, without buying any more land, we have there's a vast amount of land in Dublin that's owned by local authorities. And with a little bit of invention, we can say, you know what, let's do it. Now, Cllr doesn't have the same sort of land bank as that, but hey, you can go off and buy a few farms and do it. Albeit the dark line going down to Wexford, away you go. The last one there, Cllr County Council built 120 new homes last year. Based on the figures there, it would probably take about 37.5 years to get through the current housing waiting list. So, you know, there's a big gap between what we're doing and what we need to get doing here. But the good news is we have the models, right? Finally, we get to a bit of good news here. Bill's model works, right? Part 5, social housing was mentioned earlier. Developers of 10 or more units are required by law to propose 10% of the units to be sold to the state. In Cherrywood at the moment, the proposal is in, and Part 5 at a discounted rate is being proposed at 340,000 per unit for 2 bed. We know that all in local authority bills are around €200,000, including VAT. And Bill is building 3 beds in Ballymun, and he could do it anywhere in County Dublin for 219,000. So the critical equation is at the bottom here. The only way you can get affordable prices is you need to engage with low profit entities like the Cllr, private cooperatives, with cheap state land and pass on the discounts to end users. That's the only way that the private sector cannot do affordable. It's not possible because site prices are too high. So it doesn't matter how many incentives you're going to do, it's not going to happen. You're not going to get down to this level. You might get 10,000 subsidy on a 370,000 euro house. That isn't where you need to be. If you want to get below the red line at 240, the state has to do it, and it has to do it at scale. It's the only way to work. And this man can do it, and he's ready to go, and he just needs a bit of, he needs somebody to go in to Leinster House and start knocking heads and get them moving on it. That's it. Thank you.
I just want to start with myself. I worked in Brooks Thomas years ago, before you were all born, the oldest man in the Cllr, yeah? Hey, brother! But I'm from Ballybop originally. I always wanted to own a house of my own, and I made a mistake looking at one of the wages of a guy my age who worked in the accounts department at Brooks Thomas. His wage pack was £9.13 and fourpence. I said, I'm never going to buy a house at £9.13 and fourpence, and it took me 3 years to get out of Ireland. England first and then Canada. Went to Canada 1964, 1965, working on construction. I played for Billy Gaelic, played for Toronto, New York. But every one of us over there, every one of the young lads over there, our vision was and our dream was to come back home to Ireland and own a house cash. That was the dream. And I bought my own first house in Canada after a year and a half there. Long story. But before I went to Canada or England, no carpenters, bricklayers, electricians were allowed to buy houses. But when I came back to Ireland, this party here, Fianna Fáil, Charlie High, he opened the door to affordable houses for carpenters, bricklayers, etc., etc., etc. It was an awesome experience. McInerney helped them. So for me, and this, what does he say today? They're talking about the sites which we're building for 210 grand. I think it's fantastic. I met the Minister, Owen Murphy. I wrote a letter to him first of all, and I said, Cllr have proven them all. We can build houses anywhere for a couple hundred grand. That's a fact. Provided we had the sites for £1,000 each. Ballymun, there was 2 co-ops out there for 12 years and they couldn't succeed. Nothing. And they said to us, the land was going to be sold to a private developer. Who knows what the houses would have made out there. And we were asked by a couple of the co-ops, would we help them get it over the line? We went to DCC and told us, forget about it. And then in the end they said, look, we kept knocking on the, who said not kick the door in? Kick the door in! We kept kicking the door in. They said, look, if you can do this, we're going to give you a gold medal. We got the land, we developed it, and just imagine what Nelson, didn't cost us to take a sausage, but we got the sites for £1,000 each. The first houses were 140 to 165 grand. 3 bedrooms are 165 grand. The first girl that bought it, she's about 25 years of age. You were saying 35 at the moment? Yeah. 25 years of age. She bought her house. She was renting for 1,750 in Swords. She bought one of ours for 165 grand. Her rent, you won't believe it, €650 a month. She was saving over 1,000. Owen Murphy came out to our site out there. He gave her the key and he said, listen, this is awesome. How can you produce houses for between, say, 165 grand and at the moment, currently, 209? How do you do it? We want to replicate this model all over the country. July 2006. Has he done it? No. But we're not going to give up. We're going to keep on kicking in doors. And thank God for Fianna Fáil tonight, what they said. If they give us, so what, anyway, to make a long story short, I went to Owen Murphy, wrote a letter to say, look, you give us the land for 20,000 sites, we'll build 20,000 houses at 200 grand a piece, which is 4 billion going back into the exchequer. 1 billion of that will go back in to revenue, to the exchequer. Awesome experience, right? Awesome. They said all the builders who went bust during the recession, all our houses are pre-sold. There's no risk to the builders. The builders we have work for roughly 5 to 10%, and we work for 5%. Unbelievable. So I said, please do it. And I went on to point out, I said, 40% of the population cannot afford to buy a house at the moment. I said, you have teachers, you have young solicitors, you have nurses, you have lower paid civil servants, a whole lot. And I said to Owen Murphy at the time, I said, look, if you give us those sites, what you're going to have is people will get an average of roughly, say, €600 they will save per month. That's 12,600 or 7,200 per year. Think about it. They won't be looking for any price increases. It will stabilise the whole housing market all over the country. Just imagine, 20,000 sites, 200 grand. Mel Reynolds says we have the land. We have the land. Candy, who's going to give us